Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Subconscious Medicine. I'm so happy you guys are here. Um, just as a forewarning, I am recording episodes ahead of time. So by the time you guys are seeing this, this will have been recorded quite a while ago. But nonetheless, the topics aren't extremely current. So it should be all good. But just wanted to throw that out there, but I hope everyone's having a great week. It's currently Thursday when I'm filming this, and today I worked on something super exciting for subconscious medicine. If you guys will have seen by now, or at least it'll be out by now. I don't know if you saw it. If you don't follow the Instagram, then you definitely didn't, but I am going to be working with my first brand, so that's very exciting. And there's a promo code for you guys to use to get a discount when you shop on their website. And yeah, I'm very excited. The link will be in the description of this video as well as on my Instagram. So if you're in need of some back to school purchases, maybe, or just treat yourself, it's also a great gift. But the brand is Ken's Customs, and they have the cutest things. So you should definitely check it out, and even better excuse to be able to shop with a discount. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, just wanted to share because I think that's really exciting, and I'm super happy about it because it's a brand I really like, and I hope to work with more brands in the future, obviously. But super cool experience. So I hope you guys can benefit from that. But anyways, I have been feeling so old, which I know is a little crazy of me to say, but something about telling people, when people ask my age and I have to say that I'm 20, just the start of a new decade, is really making me feel like a geriatric, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. I feel like when you're little, you just can't wait until you're a grown up, and then it starts to creep up on you, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my god, where'd my childhood go? Bring me back to the innocence of being a little kid. So yeah, I am trying to grapple with that mindset and be appreciative of the growth in the years that I've had, and I am. But it's also it can be a little jarring at times to realize that every day is a step closer to really just being on your own and starting a life of your own, and there's a lot of opportunity in that. That's exciting, but it can also be overwhelming, and I think it's okay to sort of accept both sides of the coin. So I want to do something that I have seen other people do. Also, if you can hear the sirens right now, oh my god, I have no idea what's happening, but they're so loud. So hopefully I'm talking over it, but yeah. So the only I know I've seen more people do this, but the one example that's coming to mind right now is Alicia Marie. If you guys know who that is, she's a lifestyle YouTuber. She did a 30 under 30 video, I think, or things she learned in her 20s or things she learned before turning 30. I can't think of it right now, but anyways, very similar. So I thought, now that I'm 20 and I've lived a little bit as a 20-year-old and gotten to think about being 20, so my birthday's in May and I'm filming this in August, so I've been 20 for a little bit now. But I thought it could be really cool to talk about 20 things that I learned before I turned 20. There's definitely a lot more than 20 things that I learned, but these are sort of the most pivotal learning moments that I've had that I think are going to shape my 20s. So and most of these I think are lessons that a lot of us have to learn. Some of them might be a little bit more catered to me or more individualistic, but I think a lot of these will reign true for most people in this age demographic. So yeah, I thought it could be super interesting. I love watching videos like this, and I wanted to contribute a little bit. Okay, number one, education is an investment. You hear people talk about this all the time. I know my father is the biggest proponent of this. Um, and it's not that I didn't believe that it was true. I definitely did. But when I was going through like the original college process and committed to my first college, and then again when I was transferring, I just had a really hard time understanding why college is so expensive, at least in the US. I'm not sure if it's like this across seas, but it's so expensive to go to school here. And honestly, there's no like real budget way to do it. Maybe community college, but even that, depending on where you live, could still be relatively expensive. And I had a really tough time feeling like my investment wasn't worth it. And I will say, I come from a privileged perspective because my parents do help me out a lot with school, as do my grandparents, or my grandmother now. My grandfather's deceased, but them jointly have contributed as well. So I do definitely come from a privileged perspective here. But either way, whether you're paying for it or not, it's hard to accept the debt and the investment to get a college degree. And sometimes it really feels like you're just paying for a piece of paper. And listen, I think that the amount that I pay for school is out of this world, and still think it's too much. But I do think that I wouldn't take back these years for the life of me. You know, I transferred to UT, so I missed my freshman year here, and I'm graduating early. So I only get 2 years here. And now being at a school that I really love and appreciate, it's heartbreaking because it flies by, it goes by so quick. And everyone already says that, but especially when you've transferred and you're graduating early, it's like you get the short end of the stick for real. So yeah, but it can be really hard to feel like your money is going places, but I wouldn't take back these experiences for the world. And it's so worth it. It's worth every penny. I know it's a harder investment for some people to make than others, but if you by any means have the opportunity to go to university, again, whether it's small community college, like local state college, whatever it is, go. I will say, weigh your options. It is cheaper. I'm not like comfortable sharing how much my tuition is. I feel like that's a little breach of privacy, but I will say that I'm from Connecticut and our like big state school is UConn, and it is far cheaper for me to attend the University of Tampa than it is if I were to go to UConn. So just keep that in mind. I know state schools in the South tend to be a lot cheaper than state schools in the North, which makes sense, but just weigh your options. Sometimes your in-state school is not the cheapest option. So yeah, just apply. And also, if you go to like your guidance counselor's office, if you're in high school, they almost always get free waivers for applications, because I know that too can be a big stressor because it's like $60 or something crazy to apply to like most colleges. And that's just application. Like you don't even know if you're getting in and you're already making a financial investment. But a lot of times guidance offices have like free vouchers that they can give to students if you really want to apply somewhere. So invest in your education. It's the biggest flex to be someone who's educated, and you won't take back these experiences for the world. Okay, number two, people leave. Hate to be the bearer of bad news. People are going to come into your life and they're going to leave your life, and they're going to leave at the most perfect time. And it doesn't always feel like that in the moment. It can be tough when people leave your life, but I assure you that a time will come when you will realize that that person didn't need to hold space in your life anymore. Um, I think that a lot of times people leave during transitional periods. So, for instance, a transition from high school to college, or college to post grad, or maybe like being on a sports team to not being on a sports team or whatever. But during those transitional periods are tend to be when people will fizzle out of your life. Let them. Okay. There are there are billions of people in this world, and you have met the smallest fraction of them, and you've built some great relationships with people, and that's a beautiful thing. But you will meet more people. You will meet new friends. You will meet new partners. You will meet people who, though they may not be blood, they are family, and they will better serve you in that phase of life. So if someone is needing to leave your life, let them. It's okay. It will be tough in the moment, but you need to like look into the future and realize that your later self will thank you. Okay. Number 3, our world truly does revolve around money. So I know that this is maybe kind of expected, knowing how I feel about spending money. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, I really hate spending money. It's really, really hard for me. I struggle a lot with it, with like financial insecurity, and I'm working at it, but it's tough. However, I firmly believe that this world really does revolve around money, and your money provides you with opportunities, and those opportunities, like whether or not you capitalize them or pass them by, will determine your life path. For instance, we were just talking about college, right? So college is an investment, and the amount of money you have will dictate what types of colleges you can and can't attend. Obviously, there's lots of other factors like scholarships or athletics or whatever the case may be that might influence where you end up. But ultimately, our world does really revolve around money. I was reading something in recently that I found really interesting, and it was talking about how people nowadays, especially young people, but I guess this could extend into older people too, maybe. But people are more interested in being consumers than they are producers. So we're so invested in spending our money and consuming product more so than we are producing and creating products. And I found that to be really fascinating and also definitely reigns true. I mean, I talked last episode about overconsumption and how our generation is like the opposite of millennial. Oh my goodness. Is the opposite of a minimalist. Like we overconsume to the max, and I think it's really dangerous, but that's a perfect example of how we are more interested in consuming than we are producing product. It's really rare that you come across like entrepreneurs nowadays that are developing a new and innovative product. And I think part of that is just due to like the rise of technology and how fast things have come about in recent years. I mean, in the last like 2 decades alone, the growth in technology has surpassed the like 100 years prior to that. So obviously, trends in consumption and production are gonna fluctuate, but I think that's really interesting how she worded. I don't remember who it was. It was just like someone on like my discovery page on Instagram had like written up a comment about this, but I thought it was really interesting and is a true testament to how our world does revolve around money. So, um, yeah, I also think that this has become um, even more interesting to me as I've worked with families who are subject to generationalism and like generational trauma and poverty and things like that. And the contrast between that and generational wealth, and how rich generational wealth can be for young people and their experiences. And I'm not hating on it. If your family is able to provide for you in that way, amazing. But it off the bat offers people so many opportunities to like get ahead. So yes, as I enter my 20s, I understand that our world really does revolve around money, and It's an unfortunate truth, but I think it's an important one to accept and then to learn how to deal with. Okay, number 4, no one is exempt from hardship. I If you're my parents, which they don't listen to this, I don't think, but um, I used to be so mean to my parents because I hated the town that I grew up in. And if you don't know, I grew up in a town of like 8,000 residents, maybe. The average age is probably like 60. Super small town in Connecticut. It's just like very much what you expect, like white picket fence esque and the whole thing. And I used to hate where I lived so much, and I would be so mean to my parents because I'd be like, I just want to move. I don't want to go to our public schools. I want to go to private school. Not that I want to go to private school, I just wanted to be able to go to a school that wasn't in our town. So to me, that felt like I had to go to like a private school in a neighboring town. Um, but yeah, I used to hate it so much, and I would resent the school system because I just felt like our school was so it was lacking diversity so much. And don't get me wrong, it was. Um, the neighboring towns also were for the most part, though, so I'm not sure how I thought I was going to fix that problem. But besides the point, I resented where I grew up so much. And I used to have this conversation with my parents because I would say, I want to work with a underprivileged population. Like that's who I want to when I'm employed one day, I want to specialize in underprivileged populations, whether that be, like as I mentioned before, children and family affected by foster care, or maybe like some other underrepresented population, maybe single moms, whatever the case may be, right? I've always said that. And I used to resent it so much, especially in high school, because I felt like I lived in a community that didn't have any of that. So I was like, okay, who am I as this white upper middle class woman who's never experienced this population to say that this is who I want to work with? Like, people are going to look at me and they're going to laugh in my face. And my dad used to say to me, he was like, yes, we live in a white town. Yes, we live in an upper middle class town, but you'd be surprised about the types of hardships that your own classmates face at home, or, financially, or maybe involving their parents, or whatever the case may be. And I just used to be so dismissive. I insisted that because our community had wealth, that for some reason that exempt those people from any type of like aversive experience. And as I've gotten older, I've learned that, as I mentioned, the world does revolve around money, and a lack of money can certainly create, you know, certain hardships, but that doesn't necessarily mean that money fixes hardships. They are just exposed to different challenges. So, although the kids that I went to school with, didn't lack or didn't experience like financial insecurity, that doesn't mean that they weren't dealing with addiction in their home. That doesn't mean they weren't dealing with abusive parenting. That doesn't mean they weren't dealing with X, Y, and Z, right? There's still hardships that can exist even for people with money. And my naive childhood self used to be very dismissive to that thought. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that they're just accustomed to a different set of circumstances. But it doesn't mean that they're easy. It doesn't mean that they don't experience challenges. And that's something that in the back of my head, I wish I knew earlier, because I regret thinking that way. But at the same time, I needed to learn that lesson firsthand. And I'm grateful going into my 20s now that I see the world from that perspective, and I give people the benefit of the doubt, and I understand that we're all going through things. Okay, next. Mental health is equally as important as our physical health. Um, when you're little, no one mentions, or at least to me, no one ever mentioned mental health. Like, mental health discourse did not exist in my household, and it didn't exist at the doctor's office, and that just didn't happen. It wasn't until I was maybe like 15, 16 years old, and I went to the pediatrician that they gave me like a mental health questionnaire. And even that was like 6 or 7 questions that basically only addressed like a very small sector of mental health problems. But not blaming them by any means, but just the point being that it wasn't really a discussion. And even as it started to like populate on social media and the rise of like mental health advocacy started to come about, it just wasn't really a conversation. And as I've gotten older and had my own experiences with mental health, and I've seen people around me experience mental health or mental illness, I have realized that it is entirely equivalent to our physical health. I've watched people who have excellent physical health but struggle a lot mentally, and it completely consumes them. I myself have had times where I've excelled in one area and the other has fallen behind. I've had times where both have been. I wasn't taking care of myself in either of those ways, and I've had periods of time where I've taken care of myself in both of those ways. But the point being that in the same way that we take care of our physical health, we go to the doctor, we nourish our body, we work out, we need to dedicate the same amount of time and effort into our mental health. And if you're asking me personally, I would say that dedicating time to your mental health is even harder than your physical health because there's no physical signs of how you're doing mentally, right? So if you're working out to be healthier and that means for you maybe a change in weight, maybe your skin looks different when you're healthier, like you're eating healthier or whatever. But the point being that when someone invests time into their physical health, there are physical manifestations of how that's going. There isn't the same for mental health. You can invest all the time and effort into your mental health by going to therapy and blah, 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 doing whatever, but no one's going to be able to see that on the outside. You know it internally, and if someone's close to you and knows you well, they'll probably be able to tell, and that's awesome. But no one can see at face value that you're doing that. And so for me at least, it's even harder to invest time into your mental health, but it's so incredibly important. And I've seen the biggest change in myself and other people, as I've mentioned. But I'm so excited for young generations and like my children one day and my grandkids to grow up in an era that's mental health positive, because I think that having that type of intervention from a young age instead of like when you're 16, I mean still better than like my parents or my grandparents, but I'm really excited to see how younger generations deal with having mental health resources at such a young age. I think that's going to be a very positive trend for them. Okay, number 6, your environment is a reflection of your mind. This kind of builds off of last week's episode where I talked a little bit about my minimalism journey and how I use my room as like a safe space and I keep it very minimal. I don't do decorations or whatever because it just stresses me out. I'm not saying you have to be that extreme, but your physical environment is so important. If you know me, you know that I don't study or really do homework even in my room because my room is for sleep and I can't like mix those two things. If I'm doing homework in my room, then when it is time to go to bed and I lay in bed and I can see my desk and I can see all the papers sprawled out on it, that's going to stress me out so much. So I know better than just to separate those two things physically. I do work in different areas, even if it has to be in my apartment. I go to a study room or I go to like our living room and I just do it there because if I do it in here, then I'm like contaminating this space. But when our minds are stressed and overwhelmed, that's when our room starts to, or spaces start to look the same way. I actually saw this TikTok that talked about this in a really like funny, comical way, but she like recorded her room how it normally looks and then she recorded, I think she's a med student, but then she recorded her the same room on an exam day, like in the morning right before her exam, and then she recorded it again right after her exam, and it went from like spotless to the most trashed bedroom I've ever seen to super clean again. And her point was just like, when she's stressed out by an exam, she doesn't get around to cleaning. And I saw that and I thought to myself, like, it was obvious that she does study in that room, because there were like textbooks and things like that. But it just reminded me how grateful I am to have other spaces to study. Also, there's always other spaces, or if you work from home, there's always other spaces to work from home in. Go to a coffee shop, go to a public library, go to a college campus if there's one near you. Um, there's so many spaces. If you're someone who can study outside, I'm not personally one of those people. I wish I was, because Florida weather, but I can't focus. I get way too distracted. But if you are, go to a park. Use like your phone hotspot. There's so many solutions. You do not need to study in your own home, even, let alone your bedroom. So, yeah, I would really encourage you to keep your environment clean if you do have to work in it. And if you can avoid it at all, avoid it, because your environment is such a reflection of your mind. And when your mind is busy and your space is overwhelming, there's no opportunity for like any type of decompression or relaxation. Okay. Your effort will always be worth it. When I was little, not even little, when I like entered my teen years, I guess, I that's sort of when my perfectionist tendencies started to come about, and I used to feel so discouraged because I felt like I was putting in so much effort and it wasn't taking me anywhere. I felt this way about school, but especially about athletics. I just felt like I was investing all this time and energy and money and it wasn't going to take me anywhere and it was a waste, and like I was just throwing away time and years of working at a sport or working at school. And I used to like sit down and have conversations with my father, and he would insist that your effort's always worth it and it will all pay off in the end. And I used to look at him and I'm like, I just don't see it that way. Like, I don't feel like any of my time or effort that I've invested to this point has paid off. And if it hasn't yet, then why would I think that it would in the future? And I think that's true to some extent. I think I overlooked a lot of the opportunities that I was given when I was little, though. But I do think that's true because when you're younger and you're under someone's roof and you're so dependent on other people, in this case being my parents, it's hard to see your effort going places because you haven't really had like much to experience on your own yet. You're not very independent. But as I've gotten older and I have been served new experiences and new opportunities from so many different people, I've realized that my effort has paid off. As I mentioned, I transferred schools, and that was something that was really challenging because, unlike when you're applying to college for the first time and you have all the resources at your high school, or at least the ones that my high school had, I didn't have any of those when I transferred. I had to do it all on my own. I had to do the research on my own. I had to visit schools on my own. I had to figure out scholarships and like all that kind of stuff. That was on my own. Granted, I have a great support system and I had a lot of people to help me out. My parents helped me. My partner helped me. So I definitely did have help from other people, but in essence, I had to do that work on my own and I had to tell people how they could help and I had to delegate those tasks. And it was a lot of work because at the same time I was in college already, and it was like final season and there's just a lot going on, but I had to make a choice. And I sat down with myself and I said, okay, how bad do you want this? Do you think that this is worth the amount of time that it will require? And I thought long and hard about this, and there were days where I didn't feel like it was worth it, and there were days where I was like, I can suck it up. I don't need to transfer. It's fine here. I'm not miserable. I'm just unhappy, and I'll figure it out. And looking back, I probably would have been fine if I stayed there, but I didn't want to. And I made the conscious decision that it was worth the investment and that's what needed to happen. And so I made the commitment. I did the research, I did the paperwork, I sent the applications, I scheduled the flights to come visit, and I did that for myself because I felt like I had worked so hard at school and my hard work wasn't paying off at the university that I had chosen, which is okay. It's a great university, it just wasn't for me. But I wanted to go somewhere where I felt like I had opportunities to succeed, and that ended up being UT, and I'm really happy here. So your effort will pay off, I promise. It's not always in the short term. Sometimes you have to practice patience, which is much easier said than done, of course, but effort always pays off, I promise. Pinky promise. Okay, we all show and accept love in different ways. This is kind of rooted in like the whole rise of love languages. I've been hearing that a lot lately. I know there's a test. I've never taken the test, but I feel like I'm pretty confident in my own, and then like the people that are close to me, what theirs are. Like, for example, I know my partner's is definitely physical touch. I know mine is definitely quality time. I have a friend who I know is definitely words of affirmation. Like, I don't know. I feel like if you know someone well enough, you don't need to take the test. But regardless, we all want to receive love, but the way that we're receptive of love, it looks very different from person to person. And in my opinion, you truly begin to love someone when you are capable of catering to the way that that individual needs to receive love instead of staying committed to your own desires and like how you prefer to give it. So for instance, I the way I like to give love or show my love for people is gift giving. And so I am eager to buy people gifts that I love. I also would say it's probably words of affirmation. Those are like the two ways that I show people that I love them. So if I can think of anyone that I'm close to, I generally show my love for them in those two ways. But as I mentioned, like my partner's love language is definitely physical touch. Now, granted, we are long distance, so most of the time that's not possible. But when it is possible, I know that that's important to him, and because I love him, I need to cater to that. And as I've mentioned in a previous episode, I think that we overuse the word love so much, and we say it all the time, and we don't mean it. And then when you start to do actually love someone, you realize that you never loved them before that. I feel the same way about my partner. I feel that way about a lot of my friends too. But when you do begin to love them is when you're able to give love to them in a way that they need to be loved and vice versa. I also just think that we need to stop expecting people to show up for you the way that you show up for them. I'm someone who invests a lot of time in my relationships, most of the time more than what's healthy. I will, I admit that. And I, for a long time, had expectations that people would show the same amount of effort in me as I did in them. And as I've grown up, I realized that's just not the case. People view relationships differently, and you might view someone more or less important in your life than they do, and that will show in their actions. So instead of placing expectations on how other people are going to show up for you, let them prove to you how much you matter. And just keep that in mind when you then reciprocate love, in a friendship or a romantic relationship or whatever. But stop expecting people to show up for you in a certain way just because that's how you show up for them. You might just be a more loving and affectionate person or less, and that's fine. But stop placing those expectations on things that you can't control. Also, naturally, we want to love people in the way that's easiest for us instead of the way that they individually like to receive it. But we all deserve to be loved. And it's our partners or our friends' responsibility to learn how it is that we like to receive love and cater to that need. So you deserve to be loved as much as the next person, and if someone can't meet that need, then it's time for them to go. Um, okay, number 9. You need this is like a wow, this quote reminds me so much of my freshman year of college because I definitely did a really, really poor job of this, and I used to have it written over my bed, but you must fill your own cup before you try to fill other people's. I remember freshman year, I was really struggling. I hated my school. Again, it's a great school. It just really, really wasn't for me, and I was really unhappy. I didn't feel like I had a support system. I didn't feel like I was accomplishing anything. I didn't feel like I was independent at all. It really wasn't for me, and I knew that right off the bat, and I tried to make the most of it. And I also really tried to hide how much I didn't like. I never told my parents until literally until I got my acceptance letter at UT. And I also didn't, I tried my best to hide it from my friends, especially my friends at that school, because I did not want my opinion of the school to influence theirs at all. And some of them were really happy there, some of them were indifferent, some of them also transferred. But regardless, like I didn't want the reason for their opinion of the school um, to be impacted at all by my opinion. But I spent so much time, especially that freshman year of college, trying to cater to other people and making sure that they were happy and their needs were met and they felt loved and they felt appreciated and supported. And I didn't fill my own cup. I didn't pour any energy into myself. I didn't invest any time into myself. I really feel like I lost myself that year. I kind of fell off the train tracks with all the things that I cared about, and it showed in my relationships and in my academic success and just everything. I was not the student that I am today. I was not the friend that I am today. I was not the partner that I am today. And I think that as I made a change for myself to pour energy back into my cup, I have been able to show up for people in a much healthier and stronger way because I feel fulfilled. And don't get me wrong, like I still have tough days. I still have days where I'm not feeling my best or my mental health is sort of like down in the dumps, but overall, I have over this last year refilled my own cup and poured energy back into myself. I've picked up hobbies. I've done things for myself don't that I don't need other people for, and that's allowed me to meet the needs of those people that I love and care about. Moral of the story, fill your own cup before you can fill someone else's. Okay, number 10 is being alone really isn't that bad. I used to be so scared of being lonely or like living on my own or anything like that. And that's obviously showed by the fact that I went to college in the same state as that I lived in for my freshman year of college. Now I obviously go to school thousands of miles away from home. So there are times where I'm lonely, especially when I moved in, and then also this summer where I've been living alone. And I've learned that I'm really good at it. I'm really great at being alone. I'm great at living alone, and I actually kind of enjoy it. I do also love living with roommates, but it's been so nice to spend the summer alone. And it's crazy how this is something I used to fear so much, and now I love it. But being alone really isn't that bad. It teaches you so much about yourself. Um, it requires you to hold yourself accountable with a lot of things because no one else is there to pick up your scraps, literally and metaphorically. But it's really not that bad after all, and I am a strong proponent that everyone needs to live alone at least once in their life, even if it's just like me for the last like 3-4 months. But you need to have that time to have a space that's your own, and I think I've grown more in the last 4 months than I have in a really long time. So I strongly encourage everyone to live alone for at least a little bit. And if it's not living alone, just practice being alone. Study alone. You don't need a study partner. If you're hungry, go to the freaking dining hall alone. My freshman year self used to never, like, if a friend wasn't available to come eat with me, I just wouldn't eat. Looking back, that's crazy. Like, who cares if you go to the dining hall and sit alone? Literally no one. No one cares at all. No one's paying attention to you. It's actually also on my list, but not to get ahead of myself, but just do things alone. Practice independence by grabbing a meal on your own, or like taking yourself out on a date to the farmer's market. I don't know, whatever it is, but like you don't need a companion all the time. Just go out and live your life. If you want to do something and someone doesn't want to join you, that's fine. That doesn't mean you can't go alone. Okay, this one kind of piggies back off of people leave, but this one is more focused on like you. So let go of friendships that no longer serve you. People are going to grow and change. Hopefully, you're growing and changing too. And it's healthy to distance yourself from people and move on with your own path. You don't are not expected to be friends with the same people that you were friends with in middle school or elementary school. That's so unrealistic. You've experienced so much more in life, and if you don't click with another person anymore, that's okay. You don't have like you don't owe them anything, and I mean obviously handle this like respectfully and maturely, but if someone is no longer serving you, communicate that to them and move on. It's okay. If that welcomes a period of loneliness, again, embrace it and wait till someone else rolls around. I mean, don't wait like passively, like actively try to find new friends, obviously, but it's okay if people no longer serve you, and respect them, obviously, and the time that you did have with them, and be grateful for those experiences, but they're not expected to be in your life forever. Okay, number 12. Not everyone is raised the same way, and it shows, especially in college, for the better or the worse. I have realized so much, especially living with other people, that we're all raised really differently, and things that we think are just like normal customs and um, responsibilities clearly are not to other people. And it doesn't mean you're better or worse than someone. It just means we're all raised really differently. We have very different values instilled in us. And again, it's not a bad thing. It just means that we need to be respectful of other people's upbringing and then try to find a middle ground. I would say my parents raised me in a pretty like traditional way, and so the things that I value and appreciate are pretty consistent with what they do, and that's not the same as my roommates maybe or my friends. It doesn't mean that their parents didn't do a good job or my parents didn't do a good job. It just means that we were raised differently. And if you're going to live with those people or you're going to be friends with those people, it you need to hear everyone's side out and again try to find that middle ground. It doesn't have to be an entirely negative or positive thing, but it does allow the opportunity to be introduced to new ways of doing things, and who knows, maybe it'll pay off. Maybe you'll find like a way that works better for you. Okay, number 13. This one is like one that's very much on the top of my mind, but life does not slow down. If you are like saving it for later and just waiting for an easier time, then it's not that you think it'll be easier later because you know life's not going to slow down. It's just that you're not organizing your priorities right. I know that might seem harsh, but I'm so tired of people being like, "Oh, we'll do this later," like, "We'll do it when there's not as much on my plate." No. There's always gonna be something on your plate. Life is just busy. That's how it is. It's how it's supposed to be. And if you're not busy, then you're not challenging yourself. Why would you ever want to live like a slow-paced life? I don't know. Maybe that is some people's desire. I hate when people say that life will like be easier or slow down. I'm like, okay, that's just you giving up on challenging yourself. Um, I don't think life should ever be slow. We're here for such a short period of time. Why wouldn't you want to make the most of that and like keep pushing and experience all that you can in this short life, because we're not given enough time here. Um, so yeah, I just, in my eyes, when people are like pushing things off, it says more about their ability to organize their priorities than it does about the like pace of their life. Okay, number 14, also hot take, but you can't meet your potential if you stay in your hometown. Sorry, not sorry. I think this is so true. I think you need to move away. Doesn't have to be for college necessarily, but you need to move away. As I mentioned, am someone who, I moved out of my town. Like, I still lived on campus, but I didn't move far from home, and I didn't grow. I didn't become any more independent my freshman year of college than I was in high school. And I don't blame myself for that. I think I needed that realization, but I have grown so much since moving away from my hometown, and I really think that everyone has to do it. Even if you want to move back, that's fine, but you need to get out of the four walls of your hometown. You need to get out of those confines and just experience a different world. Again, I don't even think it needs to be a different state if you really didn't want to, but it needs to be like a community that's different than your own. The community that I went to college in was very similar to my hometown, so really wasn't much of a change. But if you can move states, do it. Like, it's the best experience. You will meet so many new people, and it forces you to be incredibly independent. And I think that the younger, the better. I think college is a great opportunity to do this, because you still have resources and you have connections. If college isn't the right path for you, that's fine. There's so many other ways to do this. Live at home for a few years, save up, and then move out on your own, or, like, whatever. There's so many paths, but maybe you'll get a job that will require you to move. But there's so many opportunities to leave your hometown. Please take them. Please just accept the challenge. It's not easy. No one ever said it was, but it's so, so, so worth it. Even if you don't love the place that you moved to, you can always move back. And I really don't think you'll ever regret it. So move out of your hometown, experience something new, and just make the most of the experience. Okay, number 15, you will never regret a trip. I've had like the travel bug recently, hence why I spent 4 weekends in a row in a different state, literally just for the weekend, like all 48-hour trips. And I don't regret a single trip. I don't care how much money you spend on a trip. I've never regretted a vacation that I've taken, whether it be to my hometown to visit family, whether it be to another country. Like, it doesn't matter. You will never regret a trip. You will always appreciate those experiences, good or bad. And I just think that traveling is priceless. If you have the time and the resources to do it, go. Go alone. Who cares? It really doesn't matter. Alone might even be better, because then there's no one else's like needs you need to cater to. You can literally shape the trip exactly how you want it. But go on the trip. Money will come and go. It's fine. You will never regret it. It's not like, I say this having mentioned that I have like financial insecurity, but in my head, it's so different, because you buy a shirt, you outgrow the shirt, you don't like it anymore, you spill something on it and it's ruined, whatever. A trip you will never forget. It will always be ingrained in your head. You'll have photos, you'll have memories to tell your kids. Like, it's priceless, and I really don't think you'll ever regret a trip. So, spend the money, go on the trip, have fun, and create memories that'll last a lifetime. Okay, number 16. This is one that I feel like I've learned very recently. But it is your responsibility to communicate to others how they can better meet your needs. So, especially with like friendships, if friends aren't meeting your needs, if they're doing something that's disappointing you, if they're doing something that's hurting you, or they're simply just not making you happy anymore, you need to communicate that to them. It's not always obvious. Friends don't always see the change in mood or whatever, nor is it their responsibility. It's your responsibility to communicate what it is that you need to other people. And if you can't communicate those needs, you can't expect people to meet them. I think that this reigns true for all friendships, romantic relationships, even family members. I'm lucky that my family, I feel like, has grown with me and support, like, they know me well and they can support my needs really well. But there have definitely been hard conversations I've had with family members where I've been like, okay, this makes me feel this way, and when you talk to me like this or when you make these comments, I feel like this, or I need you to stop doing this because it's hurting me in this way. And, sometimes there's miscommunication, sometimes there's a misunderstanding, or there's even like a generational gap. I've definitely had those types of conversations with my grandmother about certain things, and she doesn't always pick it up um, as clearly as I see it. But the point being that those conversations have to be made or have to be had, and it's your responsibility to start them. You can't rely on other people to like play a guessing game of how it is that they can best support you. You need to communicate to them. And at that point in time, it's their responsibility to accept that need that you have. And if their behavior or if your relationship doesn't change or they're not willing to make that change or adjustment, then they're not a person that deserves to take up space in your life. But that communication needs to be had. And then after that time, you need to allow them time and space to make that adjustment. And, again, their behavior afterwards will be sort of the tell all. Okay. Number 17, you cannot make other people see your worth. Again, this is a very current one for me. I have had to let go of a person recently who should be involved in my life. Traditionally, like this person you would have a relationship with, and I spent years and years and years trying to prove my worth to this person, and they don't see it. Um, so I've had to sort of let go, and it's hard, I will admit, but I also have come to terms with it. I've realized that I've done all I can do, and there's nothing more that I have like to give. So, I'll always be here if they change their mind and they want to have a relationship with me, but at this point in time, I just don't think it's healthy for either of us. Um, but you cannot make people see your value. And I don't even think it's that they don't see it. I think it's that they don't want to be a part of it. Your value reigns true by your actions. And so if you spend enough time with an individual, they're going to be able to see what value it is that they bring to the table. It's a conscious choice that they're making to not want to be a part of it or not want to be, um, like affected by that value. I also want to say that even like blood or family can't change this. As I mentioned, the person who I've had to let go with is someone who they're not blood, but like they should, like they're expected to want to have a relationship with me, and they don't. And that's okay. It's they don't owe me anything. I don't owe them anything. And so if they're going to make the choice to not see my worth, then I'm going to make the choice to not have a relationship with them. Um, I also do think, though, that there's an expectation that family is everything and like your blood relatives are like your people and you can't give up on them. I don't think that's true. Um, I never thought I'd talk about this, but I have two sisters. I know I've really only talked about one probably on here, but I have another sister who I don't have a relationship with at all. Couldn't tell you what she's doing in life, couldn't tell you where she works or, if she has a partner or where she lives even. We don't have a relationship, and there's a lot of history to this, but it used to bother me a lot. I used to spend a lot of effort trying to make her see what I could add to her life, and she doesn't want to see that, at least at this phase in our lives. And so, again, I'm always here if she changes her mind, but I've had to come to terms with the fact that I'm not a person that she wants in her life, and that's okay. So, again, a hard lesson to learn, but one that I feel like I've learned a little bit younger than most people probably, but you can't make other people see your worth. It's never going to work. So invest your time and energy in the people that do see your value. Okay, number 18. You will always be your toughest critic. No one cares about you as much as you care about you, or the way you look, or how well you did on a test, or anything. You will always be your toughest critic, and that shows that you care about yourself and that you see your potential. Um, you owe it to yourself, though, to learn how to love you. Um, it doesn't matter if a partner or friends or family love and appreciate you and show that all the time. It's not until the day that you learn to love yourself that you'll actually like reach your potential and build a positive self-image. So as much as I used to like hate that I was so tough on myself and not see it and point fingers at other people and blame it on them or whatever, I have come to realize that I am my toughest critic. I put the pressure on myself, and we're all kind of built innately to do that, especially when it's things that we care about. So I care a lot about school, and I will always be my toughest critic about school. I have like this complex in my head that insists that I get straight A's. My parents have never told me that I need to get straight A's. I tell myself that because I'm toughest on myself because academics is something that I care about. If you care about your profession or sports or whatever, you will be a critic of yourself on the field or in the workplace or whatever because you want to see yourself grow and succeed. So you will always be your toughest critic. No one has the same expectations for you that you have for yourself, but that's what allows you to challenge yourself and to grow. And instead of defeating yourself for that, be proud that you care enough about yourself and you see enough potential to even place those expectations on yourself. Okay, number 19. It's not death that scares people, it is failing to live life. And I know that this sounds like counterintuitive, but there is a difference between living life and existing on this planet. And people who live life are people who assume opportunities and challenge themselves and try new things and go on the trip and meet new people. People who exist in this world are people who go through the motions and do their job and don't do anything that's not asked of them. And it's that type of life that people fear. People want to be remembered. We all want a legacy, but if we fail to live our life to the fullest, then we can't possibly expect our loved ones and ancestors to remember us, and that's what's scary. Again, I was watching a TikTok the other day that was just like a voiceover of someone, like some like inspirational speaker or whatever. I always get trapped in those loopholes, but he was like 100 years from now will be 3 more generations in your family or whatever, and they won't even know your name and blah 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 blah. And his point was just that like life's too damn short to get hung up on these small things and to be so scared about something that is inevitably going to happen. We are all going to die, we are not all going to live. So instead of hanging ourselves up over like the thought of death and how we're going to die and when we're going to die and who we're going to leave behind, just live life so that people can remember you. Do something memorable in your life so that people feel a need to write it down or to document it in some way so that they can tell their grandkids. I think about my own family, and I don't know anyone on my mom's side past my grandparents. Like, it goes 2 generations deep. My mom, her brother, and then their parents, and that's it. I never met a great grandparent. I didn't meet like aunts and uncles, nothing. So, in my mind, her family's so small. When in reality, my grandmother's family was huge. She was one of like 10 kids or something crazy. Never met a single one of those people. Um, and again, like obviously there's a lot of history there, but I don't know any of it. And I think to myself, I have great relationships with some of my family members, and I'm going to like tell my kids so much about my grandparents because they've changed my life and I love them all so much. And I can't wait to share those stories. And I hope that one day someone will do the same for me. I hope that one day someone will tell, their kids about Grandma Ella. So instead of fearing this inevitable death, let's just practice living life to the fullest and building our own legacy and cultivating a life full of rich and fruitful experiences that someone's going to want to tell their kids about one day. Okay, and last but definitely not least, number 20, life gets better. I know no one wants to hear it. I couldn't tell you how many times I heard people tell me this when I was like at my lowest, but it really does get better. And I say that smiling because I know I've lived just a fraction of my life and I know that there's still so much more to come, but it does get better. Stop giving up on yourself. Stop losing faith in the world and what it has to offer. You just might not have been served yet the experiences that you need. Maybe they're coming later in your life, but that gives you so much more to look forward to. But I promise it gets better. I promise that there are people in this world that you haven't met yet that you will learn to love, and that's a beautiful thing. Maybe even places too. Prior to about a year and a half ago, I'd never been to Tampa, Florida, and now this place feels more like home than my hometown that I lived in for 18 years. So you never know where this life's going to take you, but please, please don't lose faith in what it has to offer and know that I promise it gets better. And if you're struggling, reach out to someone that you love and who cares about you, or find additional resources. Reach out to me, but I promise life gets better. So don't give up, keep going, and take new opportunities with grace. Alrighty, guys. Well, that went by so quick, but that's 20 things that I learned before I turned 20. Again, as I mentioned, there's definitely a lot more than 20 things that I learned, but as I was just brainstorming, these are the first that came to mind. So I think that it was that way for a reason. So I wanted to share, but I'd love to hear what you guys have learned in. I'm assuming you guys are all like kind of around my age, so like the biggest life lessons that you guys have learned, I would love if you could share. But thank you all so much for being here. I hope that this was at all insightful, or at least maybe this resonated with some of you and you feel like you've learned some similar lessons. That would be pretty cool too. But thank you guys so much for listening. Can't wait to see you all next week, and I hope you all have a great week. Bye, guys.